Thanks for tuning in for another episode of My Next Property. My name's Steve Ash. I'm the founder of Property Strats. I've built an $18 million property portfolio while helping everyday Australians achieve financial freedom. I'm joined by Tommy Clarke. He's had a big night, but he's ready to go today.
Thanks, Steve. Good to be here again, mate. Good night last night. A few beers, no teas. You had a low mid-strength beer
I had a mid-strength beer, so I'm actually living life in the fast lane. So really sort of, I'm feeling pumped after having that one beer. Had a little gym session this morning. You had a cheeky McDonald's.
F45, oh, mate, the sausage and egg McMuffins, nothing better.
Nothing better, absolutely.
And a coffee. So ready and raring to go.
Raring to go. And I know you're pretty excited about this episode. It's another hot spotting episode. We're going to be putting out these episodes pretty regularly. We've covered quite a few areas now, but we're coming back to the kind of area that everyone's talking at the moment, Melbourne. And in this particular episode, we're going to be looking at two price points. We're going to take $700,000 budget and we're going to look at above and below and pick out two areas across Melbourne, or actually Geelong in one of these instances, and really sort of dive into those areas and sort of see what we're seeing. So you pretty excited to get into this?
Ready to go, mate. We've got some good numbers, some good stories to tell, and it's looking healthy down there across the board, isn't it? Regional and metro-wise.
Yeah, it is.
Lots going on.
There's a lot going on, and as we film this, so we're mid-September at the moment, and we're actually just talking before we came to air, we've got the 5% cap.
Yeah.
All of the prices are being raised in the various states. That's due on October the 1st. It's a really good opportunity for investors to get in just before that. It's not too much longer to get in.
Yeah, 12 days.
Yeah, or days. Exactly, days to get in.
We're talking about getting me another deal right before that kicks in.
Well, I know you want to get another deal before, but if we look at it, so Melbourne is, and Victoria is like the cap goes up to 900,000 for established dwellings. And so that's just going to be fuel to the fire. Like Sydney's 1.5 million, Brisbane's 1 million. So you just think of like all that pent up demand, those first home buyers. I think it's good for the government. It gives them a real chance to get onto the market.
Yeah.
And so in the two areas that we're talking about, they stand to sort of benefit nicely.
But even our sources on the ground, they're saying that they're starting to see some additional interest with auctions and the volumes that are attending some of those, right, in the lead up to that change. So it's already kicking in now.
Oh, no, the open homes, and this is what we saw with the first rate decrease earlier this year, so particularly in Frankston, but also Brizzy. The excitement, you get the numbers. I think there was 18 to 20. It's one of the suburbs that we're about to talk about at the weekend, and that was really not getting many numbers, a real lukewarm market there. So we're starting to see the effects, and then Brizzy as well, we covered it in another episode recently. They're doing well. So this is this stimulus and what's coming in is really going to be like rocket fuel to the market. So,
what do you think it's going to do? Do you reckon it's going to kick in? You're going to see dramatic price increases or adjustments straight off the bat, or do you reckon it'll be a bit more of a slow burn? Yeah,
I don't think it'll be straight off the bat, but we don't know what's going to happen. But what we'll see, and what history dictates of when these sort of things come in, is if all of a sudden you can put a 5% deposit in, and you can just go into one of these areas, and you've got up to 900,000. You're not going to go in and buy 600, 700. You're going to use all that budget. And so it's that middle ring, that kind of middle band sort of suburbs. They're going to be the ones that are going to be targeted, I think, by these groups. And what you're seeing is the lower end take in Melbourne, where kind of like the likes we've been buying in like Broadmeadows, Melton, Frankston's obviously moved up, but Werribee Hoppers Crossing, let's just say, all of a sudden with this kind of grant coming in, you can get into the next level of suburbs. And if families can do that, or first home buyers can do that, they will do that.
Yeah, and you think about the interest rate cycle we're in as well. Yeah. If there's another interest rate cut combined with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're just talking about this before, Aaron. I don't think that you can bank on this, but if you had the APRA serviceability buffer removed as well, especially on the tier one, some of the tier three lenders, they discount that anyway. But all of these things, it's just more borrowing power. So there's quite a few tools, and the property market, I don't come across as a spruiker, but generally believe the property market's looking good for the next 2 years.
Yep, absolutely.
Just because of all these things.
Yep. All right, mate, let's get into it. So you're going to talk about today Point Cook.
I'm going to talk about Point Cook. So I'm going to take the one suburb above 700. And you're going to take the one below. So Point Cook's an area sort of I haven't talked about a lot, but I see a hell of a lot of value in there. And
you've been talking about it for a while. It's been off the radar for a lot of people, right? But we're starting to see a little bit more interest coming into that market beyond property strats?
No. Owner-occupiers, it's a big owner-occupier market. Not many investors have looked there. So Point Cook's an area about 26k southwest of the CBD. Yeah. It's a massive suburb. It's about 26,000 dwellings there. Population around, I think it's around the 80,000 mark. Yeah. There's about 16 estates. So we're kind of, it's a bit different to the traditional sort of property investment area that we look at. If we take Broadmeadows or Werribee, it's generally older type houses on 600 square meters where, the house is maybe built in the 70s, 80s or whatever, generally needs a bit of work. Here we're actually looking at Point Cook, really, the house and land packages starting around that 2,000 mark. And so we've seen 16 estates come up. A massive area, but really good schools there. It's a very desirable place for owner-occupiers. What we see is that owner-occupier rate, it's the devil's number, is 66.6, which probably might deter a few investors, but what we're seeing is that number's coming up. And it's just a very nice place to live. The kind of metrics that we look at, and there's some proprietary data sources that we kind of look at, is we measure it, and it's a very affluent, high socioeconomic area. Mm-hmm. We kind of look at things of schools in the area, sort of household income, jobs people do, and Point Cook tracks very well in these metrics. Yeah. And if you look over the road and you've got Hoppers Crossing and Werribee, and you've got someone like Point Cook, for my money, I think families will kind of look at that. If we look at the typical price, which is similar to the median, it's around that 932,000 mark. Mm-hmm. But if you're picking, this is what we're seeing, you can pick deals up well below that, around that $700,000 to $800,000 mark. So it comes in that sort of cap we've just been talking about. You'd be your family's picking up around that 4-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage. And so those are the kind of type of assets I think are going to perform really well. Yeah.
Well, mate, if you've been every time we have a conversation, there's not a conversation we don't have that you don't talk about Point Cook, right? You've been bullish on this for a long time now.
I have, and I'll put my head on the chopping board. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But the way I look at it is that, okay, the big downside to Point Cook is there's a couple of things. Obviously, the houses are on smaller plots. Yeah. So we're looking at anywhere between even the high 200 square meters, so 280 up to, say, 600 plus. But what we got is really good price disparity. Yeah. And so that lower end, we picked a deal up a couple of weeks ago at 615,000, and that was a house on 300 square meters, 422, and that goes all the way up to 3 million in the really fancy sort of estate, which is Century Lakes within Point Cook. Yeah. And so I like seeing good price disparity, because it's a bit of a kind of like look into sort of where prices can go. I'm not saying like this lower price is going to go to 3 million, but you can see that there's already demand and people are paying those sort of prices in that suburb. Yeah. So when you've got a disparity sort of arbitrage almost play, if you will, people will take that. So that's one thing.
And talk to me about the supply. Is there any potential new supply coming down the pipe in this particular area of Melbourne?
It's a very good question, and it's the one thing that I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because it's the one thing that people always talk about or ask the question about Point Cook when we talk about it. And the simple answer is no. I mean, the building approval is around 52, 53, so nothing coming to the market. That might sound like a lot, but when you've got 25,000 properties, it's nothing. Stock on market's very tight. It's about 200 properties, I think, but a lot of them are sold. And so that's pretty small.
And we always talk about, when we talk about building approvals, and we get clients that talk about, I don't want to go into that area because there could be a lot of supply. Yeah. You still got to build the things. You've got
to like developers have got to build it, buy the sites. They've got to get feasibility. They've got to get the subdivision plans. They've got to get the building approvals. This is a 5 to 7 year plan. If we look at Point Cook, you can go into Google Maps and you can see that there's lots of land, but that's outside of Point Cook. But some of that land is not developable as well. And so it's kind of wastelands, etc. So Point Cook's fully developed now in those areas, and relatively. If we look at land values, and so if you were buying a 300 square meter plot in Point Cook, it's going to be 550, 600. If you're buying, say, a 400 to 450 square meter plot, it's around about that 700,000 mark. So there's an arbitrage play on the construction costs there as well, which is amazing.
And so we've seen a bit more movement in this market over the last 3 months with more interest coming into it. What are the numbers saying, days on market, and what are you seeing on an average rolling median prices and things like that?
Well, this is the good opportunity, and this is where we want to buy in. Like we've talked about Frankston, and Frankston, the days on market around about that sort of 24. Yep. This time last year, about 32, 33. So that's really gone into a supercharged market. Point Cook at the moment, days on market around that 45 days or so, but it's trending down.
Not too bad, yeah.
It's not too bad, but it's a lukewarm market.
Yep.
So it's a good place to look at because you can get
in now.
Good, yeah, exactly. You get in now, you can get good discounts. The other metric we like to look at is the hold time. And so if we look at the average hold time, it's trending up. And so that means stock is becoming to get a bit tighter. People are holding on to the properties a lot longer, and it's smoothing up. So we're going to see sort of down the track supply problems with Point Cook, I think.
Yep.
And so if we're getting in this lukewarm sort of phase, we've got the sort of the decent capital growth to come. So there's a lot to like about it.
And mate, transportation nodes into the CBD. Is there main arterial roads that can take you straight into the Melbourne CBD from this particular precinct? Train lines. Talk to us about that. Yeah, sure. So there's a few things to do. There's a train line at Williams Landing. Yep.
You can get in. Probably one of the biggest downsides of Point Cook, because it is a big suburb.
Yep.
Is really the travel getting out of Point Cook. So Point Cook Road gets, pretty stuffed up in the morning, and if you're down at one of the lower estates like Saltwater Estate, something like that, it can be a bit of a nightmare to get out. They're trying to improve that sort of road. There's works going on there to sort of extend the road, so that'll help getting out of Point Cook. And then you've obviously got the Westgate Tunnel, and that's going to make, when we featured that in a few sort of other podcasts that we've done, and that's going to make travelling, getting around the city a lot easier. So there's a few sort of infrastructure plays going on. Train lines about Williams Landing, it's about 40 minutes into the CBD. And so there's a lot of good stuff there.
So how bullish are you on this market? So in 5 years' time, what the average price of Point Cook now is?
Well, the median price is around that 780 mark. We look at other metrics, so we got the typical price around that 930 mark. But
where do you see it going?
Okay, you're putting me on the spot here. So, no one's got a crystal ball. But all we can do is look at affordability, and we can look at other similar markets. So kind of like, the data points that we look at within property strats, it's that undervalued that we kind of think, that 40 to 50% uplift over the next 5 years or so. But clearly if we can get good deals, then that's good. If we look at sort of comparable suburbs, and it's a bit like apples and oranges, so we take it with a bit of a pinch of salt. But if we look at, say, suburbs in Sydney and Brizzy, for example, so in Sydney, I'd be thinking Kellyville is a fairly good sort of, benchmark. Yep. And so Kellyville's got a similar sort of socioeconomic score. It's a similar sort of distance to the CBD. You've obviously got the train line now, and I think the median in price in Kellyville is $2 million plus.
Yeah, wow.
If we look at, say, Brizzy, we've got I think Rochdale's is probably a better sort of comparison. So a lot of developments happened up in Rochdale. Again, the same amount of distance to the CBD, but again, the median price is just 1.5 million plus.
Yeah, okay.
And so here we've got Point Cook, and I just think it's part of the cycle. Like, people will kind of look at how undervalued Melbourne is. It's why we talk about Melbourne a lot. And they'll come down, and what we'll see with families is that they're not going to want to live in those more lower socioeconomic areas, especially when you're looking in Hoppers. Price in Hoppers is around 650 to 700. If you go across the road, you can get a 422 property in Point Cook. You can be in a really good school zone like the Alamander High School Zone or the Featherbrook, really good school zones, and then that will attract people. So this is why I'm so bullish on the area, and I think there's a few areas in the west, and I'm happy to we can do pods on them at some point, but Williams Landing, we've done one on Taylor's Hill, obviously. Point Cook, I think these are some of the most undervalued suburbs in Australia at the moment.
Good. Well, we're going large on them, so let's hope it works out that way. I'm sure it is. The numbers are pointing that.
Well, if you look at the construction costs, you can't build a house in these areas for less than 1.1, 1.2.
Yep.
And so there's only one way it's going. And there's one last thing I want to sort of talk about, and then we'll hand across to the other suburb in a set. And really, it's looking at Melbourne in general as an interstate investor, or even if you're an investor within Victoria. We know that there's some pretty penal kind of tenancy laws, if you will.
Yeah.
And so when you do buy a house, you need to get electric compliance, gas compliance, minimum, standards checks. And so if you're buying an older property, and don't get me wrong, I think these suburbs have a hell of a lot of value, but if you're a busy professional and you're kind of working 60-hour weeks or whatever, you don't really want to be dealing with all these maintenance problems. And so to get a property compliant in some of these areas is significant money. You're not going to get sweat equity value back on that. And so some of these areas where you've got, really nice properties, they're being built, maybe they're 15 years, 20 years old max. You're not going to have these problems with compliance. They're going to get decent. They're going to attract renters. The vacancy rate's around that sort of 1.9% at the moment. But you're not going to be up for lots of upfront costs to fix these items because they're already compliant because they're newer type properties. And with this, you're going to get depreciation. You're going to get pretty decent yields. Some of the properties around that sort of 700 marks, about 4.2, 4.3. And I just think it makes a lot of sense for set and forget investors. If you're a more active investor, for sure, look at other areas, or maybe look at an area we're going to about to talk to in a second. But that's my thesis on Point Cook.
Good. Exciting.
Okay.
Yeah, let's keep an eye on that one.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll revisit this in 6 months' time and see what the numbers are doing then, hey?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can put me on the spot and then you can chastise me if I've got it wrong. So
I will do that. You can rely on me to do that, that's for sure.
Absolutely. But
so, mate, let's go to Geelong.
Let's go to Geelong. So where are we thinking below?
So there's a suburb called Lara.
Yeah,
Lara. So before we get to Lara, I thought I'd just give some context on Geelong.
Okay.
So Geelong is a market we love. It's about 75 kilometres from the Melbourne CBD, and it's a massive satellite city. So the total population size of Greater Geelong is just under 300,000, 280,000. And you think about other large regional hubs like Townsville, they've got population centres of over around 200,000 people, right? So the Geelong area is massive, and it's close to Melbourne, and it will benefit a lot in its property price growth over time from the flow-on effect from Melbourne.
Yeah.
So we really like it. We did an episode recently on Bendigo, and we think Bendigo and Geelong, as well as Ballarat, are really good opportunities to review. Now, obviously, we always look at the economic makeup of the city. So it is a massive satellite city. It turns over, or the GRP of Geelong in total is around 20 billion.
Yeah.
So it's really a significant economic powerhouse. The economic makeup of Geelong's highly diversified. Again, there's not one industry sector that represents more than 20% of GRP. It's made up of healthcare, manufacturing, services, retail-orientated businesses. So there's not one sector that dominates the market, and there's a lot of major organisations, both locally Australian organisations and global organisations that have presence in Australia that are moving out to the Geelong area. So the unemployment rate's okay, 4.6%. The migration to Geelong significant. So in I think the 2047, they're looking at the population size moving from where it is now to 500,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's growing. Okay. It's growing massively. And if you actually break that down now in terms of the last 12 months and the net inflows into Geelong, or if you look at all net inflows into regional cities from capital cities across Australia, Geelong's captured 10% of those inflows itself.
Wow.
Yeah. So clearly people want to live there, and it is a beautiful area. You've been to Geelong? I mean,
many times.
It's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. I definitely live there. It's on the coast. It's beautiful lifestyle. And
Bells Beach.
It is, yeah. I'm not a surfer. You a surfer?
Not a surfer, but I've been to Bells Beach. Hey, a bit of a pilgrimage.
Plum, right? No, it is.
But you got Cornwall.
So, so look, we like it. There's certain pockets you want to stay clear of, which is that exist in every market. We can talk about a few of those. And fundamentally, if you look at the investment that's going on in that market, I mean, there's about $14 billion worth of investment that's planned for that Geelong precinct. And the suburb we're going to talk about now is Lara. And that clearly will benefit from all of that. All right. So Lara, we're doing a lot of buying in at the moment for our customers. We really like it. There's lots of suburbs in Geelong we like, but we particularly like Lara. And I like it because of its location. Okay, so it's out of Geelong on the way to Melbourne. It's about 55 minutes from the Melbourne CBD to Lara. But if you look at something like a Werribee, it's about 45 minutes from the CBD to Werribee. But if you look at the actual property markets of Werribee and Lara, Lara is a much more compelling opportunity, right? And it's only 10 minutes further down the line from Werribee.
Yeah.
And you spoke about it before about the socioeconomics of the areas, the owner occupancy rates of the areas, which key statistics we always like. And across both of those metrics, as an example, they're much more favourable over Werribee. So the owner-occupier stats of Lara are around 80%.
Okay, that's good.
And the socioeconomic scores a lot higher as well.
Yes.
So I think the owner-occupier percentage of Werribee is around 60-odd%, right? So it's definitely a lot.
Spot. I think 67 or so.
A lot lower. So there's a mix of housing types there. There's large sort of land opportunities that like farming type areas that sit within there, very, very expensive blocks or very, very expensive pieces of land, and that pushes up the average price of the overall area.
Yeah.
But there's also great, good set and forget properties in the 600s, high
smaller
fives.
plots of lands, yeah.
Smaller blocks, much smaller blocks of land, but really good properties, set and forget assets are going to do well. They're not going to cause you any issues, and they're just going to be a growth vehicle for the next few years, right? So we like it. The numbers are really starting to turn. Geelong as a whole compared to Melbourne, it's a little bit slower at the moment in terms of activity on the ground. But particularly over the last sort of 8 weeks, we're starting to see a little bit more activity from the buyers agency community
and investors
coming into that market. So I think Melbourne clearly is really moving now. We spoke about Point Cook, what's happening there. I think Geelong's and Lara is more of a 2026 play. But I think as we get closer to 2026 and get into that year next year, you're going to see Geelong really starting to move quite quickly. So perfect opportunity, Lara, and other areas within Geelong to think about getting in now before the numbers start to turn, a lot sharper than what they are at the moment. So even in Lara, the medium average house price over the last 3 months, you can see it starting to shift quite quickly. The days on market, you look at the numbers, I think about 40 days on market at the moment, but that was much higher. 3 or 4 months ago. Down. So it's definitely trending down. Everything, all the numbers that we typically look at are trending down. Vacancy rates around 2.5%. You're getting higher yields than what you're getting in Melbourne, about 4.5%, 4.5% in these areas. So very bullish on them, and we're really starting to focus on our client portfolios into these markets now, particularly as we move into the 2026 period.
So what sort of deals would you say we'd be getting in Lara at the moment? What sort of price point? I mean, the median, what median do you have at the
overall
moment?
Median's just under 700, but it's sort of, it's a little bit, because of those higher valued properties that sit on much substantial land blocks, they distort those numbers a little bit. But we're buying lots of properties at the moment around the 600 mark, 4.5% yields, $480 to $500 a week rent, and clients are loving them, and they can see the value in them, and they can see the potential opportunity in them as well. So that's sort of where it's at, between the 580s to the 650s. That seems to be the sweet spot at the moment for Lara, for us. Clearly you can go higher if you move into other areas of Geelong, but that's where it's sitting for that particular area. Yeah,
no, I totally agree. It's a high socioeconomic area. Some of those metrics we're talking about from Point Cook, they kind of figure here. And the things that I'm seeing with Lara is a good median buying price.
Yeah.
A very desirable place to live.
And it's also close to the Geelong CBD as well, right? So you've literally got the best of both worlds.
And it's close to Geelong CBD, but it's also very affordable. So the local population can easily afford to buy houses there, and that's a really good metric that we look for sort of capital growth combined with that 3. So you've got that play to go into Geelong and obviously all the way into the CBD. So no, I really like this. And just I've got to give a hat tip to someone who I work with. Her name's Simone. She lives in Lara. She's told us all about the area. She knows it inside out, and we've had some really good intel. She knows the good pockets and bad pockets, and she's been helping us out with that. So thank you, Simone, for all of that. But it sounds great, and I know there's a load of other areas in Geelong that we're going to unpack at some point. But Lara's the one that we're really thinking.
The proximity to both markets. It's literally right in the middle. So best of both worlds.
Best of both worlds, yeah. So we've got houses on smaller plots near the station. We've got houses on really big plots. About that sort of 55 minutes into the CBD. What about that
800 square metre block we picked up the other week? That was an absolute belter.
Yeah, no, that was good. That was a good deal. That one, that was 850 square metres. Was it $625,000?
Yeah, it was.
No work needed to be done. What would that rent for? 500 to 550. Yeah, and potentially could subdivide that down the track, do a number of things. So that was a belch, as you call them, but it's good. And I think one of the points you made was pretty good. And having lived in Melbourne and spent quite a bit of time in Geelong, when I used to commute in from Frankston, it's actually the same time to commute from Geelong and some of these suburbs and Lara into the CBD as well. And I actually used to work with quite a few people at Goldman who used to sort of come in from Geelong, and they had that great. You've got the Bellarine Peninsula down there. It's beautiful.
Yep.
You know, great golf courses, good sights to see. Then you've got Torquay, and then you've obviously got the Great Ocean Road, which you can go onto. So it's really well placed. And in your opinion, because I know you know Newcastle well, do you seeing that sort of Newcastle play happening in Geelong a little bit?
I do. I mean, I think so, absolutely. I mean, they're very similar cities, aren't they, in terms of their makeup and their size and so forth. So, I mean, I like Newcastle as well. And maybe we were talking about Newcastle last night, right?
Yeah.
And we've got some demand for that market from our client base. But I do see them very similar. I think probably Geelong maybe will represent some better value and provide a better growth profile than Newcastle over the coming sort of 3-4 years, just by nature of where it is in its cycle. But Newcastle also, the sustainability of that market from an economic profile perspective, we'll also see those prices continue to move north also. But if you want to compare the two, I'd probably say Geelong's better value and it's got a better growth profile in the short and medium term, but like them both.
No, absolutely. I think it's at more towards that start of the cycle. But I think looking at the numbers, I think Geelong's been pretty resilient over the last few years, whereas Melbourne's really been in the doldrums. There's certainly been some pockets that have performed well in Geelong. Yeah. And with tighter vacancy rates, as we're talking about, good areas to live, lot to do around there.
And it will be the second wind market off Melbourne, right? So as Melbourne grows and that starts to really reach its sort of pointy end of the cycle, that's when, Geelong will just kick in after that point, right? I see a load of value there, and it's, I mean, I'm going to pull you up on one more deal that we have seen. So off market block of units there, 1.2 million. That just came up the other day, right?
Four units.
That is a beauty. It's rented to the NDIS.
Rented the NDIS. Right?
And I think there's a 4-year lock-in rent period with them. And that just, I saw that and I thought, holy smokes! I mean, that's just a beautiful pocket. Great looking unit block, solid foundations, great yield, great tenant. It's like the holy grail, right?
And it's 4 2-bedders, isn't it? I think so.
Yeah, there's no issues with lifts or pools or anything like that. It's a set and forget beautiful.
300,000 a unit.
Yeah, it's
like if you deconstruct that, and you strata title, do whatever you can. There's so many options. So
a growing area, growing profile, and you've got that guaranteed income that's just going to come through from a government entity for the next 3-4 years. So we've locked that up, and we've got some clients on that. That didn't take much to get them onto that deal, did it, Steve? That was a pretty quick turnaround.
Yield, like making money going in, because if you deconstruct that, those units will be 400,000 each, so you can actually see the amount of money you can make going into that 400 or so. And so it was off market. Another cracker there. So.
And it just shows there's opportunities in every asset type within these larger areas, right? Whether it's units or assets that you can build on down the track, or land bank for that type of strategy, or just set and forgets, right? There's still opportunities everywhere in these large regional satellite cities, and commercial. Commercial opportunities in Geelong are significant because of the economic makeup of the area. Maybe we should do an episode on that. I mean, that industrial asset we picked up 2 weeks ago in Geelong, and the net yielding that was providing our client was just next level. Unbelievable. So,
absolutely.
and that the tenant within that business is just going to keep pumping, because of what's happening within the economy, the population growth, just everything that's going on there. That opportunity was a great one, and it really allowed that client to take his portfolio to another level, because that extra level of cash injection we got him now allows him to go and buy 3 or 4 more residential assets, right? So he was stoked.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was. And like you said, there's many sort of assets like in Point Cook. Obviously, we're looking at more kind of established houses, boring bread and butter. In Geelong, obviously, much diverse area. It's a big, got blocks of units, apartment blocks. Standalone houses, townhouses, and good commercial assets. So that's awesome. I mean, really enjoyed this episode. So
good one.
Melbourne's kind of hotspots. Well, Melbourne suburbs, I should say, over 700, and below 700, we've got Point Cook. We're tied to 2 very different suburbs, if you will. So Point Cook, very close to CBD, but then Lara, very good suburb to watch in Geelong. So awesome. Really enjoyed this. We've got another Hotspots episode coming soon, but thank you, Tom.
Thanks, mate.
For doing
Pumped
this.
again. Great to be here. Let's get on to the next one.
Sounds good.
You beauty.
Cheers, mate.
See you, mate.
Thanks.